Hello and welcome into the latest edition of the Fore-All Podcast. I'm Jesse Morrison alongside Max Bechtold. We had a great tournament in Thailand over the weekend. We will get to that in just a second. But first, Max, there is some news. Anna Nordqvist is the captain of the 2026 European Solheim Cup team. Obviously, that's close to us because she went to Arizona State. We went to Arizona State. Um, Pretty cool to see her get this honor. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it's just kind of real quick going off the ASU thing. It's like for the last few years, it's felt like the European Solheim Cup team has been like the central place for ASU players, with Lynn Grant and Nordquist and Carlota Saganda. So it's kind of cool to now see one get the captain's job. I mean, this was. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I think I'm in the minority on this. I was a little bit surprised by this. Not that she got the captaincy job, she was next in line whenever she wanted it. But I kind of thought since she's still an active player who played on the last Solheim Cup team, and despite a record that maybe didn't show it, I thought she performed really well on that team. And so I kind of always thought, even though her game has really struggled in the last year, and she's been very open about struggles on and off the golf course, that's not a secret. That's not something she hides. I still thought she was kind of possibly in play to get a captain selection in 2026. I kind of view her as one of those players, like if you want to compare it to the Ryder Cup, where Ian Poulter and Sergio Garcia, like before they went over to live, they were picked no matter how well they were playing, just because they're kind of legends of the event. They're great people to have in the locker room. They kind of get the team mojo going. And so I kind of thought that she would still possibly be in play for that. But I think what this tells me is she's kind of saying goodbye to her playing career in the Solheim Cup, moving on to this new chapter. One of the greatest and most decorated Solheim Cup players ever. She's played in every Solheim Cup since 2009, I believe. And so she's got so much experience. She's got a great record in the Solheim Cup. She's had some really iconic moments. She's been a assistant captain for the last 2 years. She's been a playing captain. So I'll be interested to see how she slips into this role. And I do think a little bit of it might have been because we don't know all the details, but there's been rumors of some behind the scenes issues with the European Solheim Cup team, especially this last time, specifically around the Leona Maguire situation. And I think Nordquist was really the safe pick who all the players are going to be able to get behind. She's non-confrontational. She's a great chemistry, player. I think she'll be a great chemistry captain as well. I'm just going to say, I don't think it's a coincidence that the first person I saw congratulate her on the job was Leona Maguire. So I do just think that this is kind of one of those things where I think after the last couple of years, they wanted the safe, great chemistry pick, and I think they knocked it out of the park.
Obviously, you mentioned that she was the vice captain in 2023 and 2024. She's won 17 of her 35 Solheim Cup matches and halved three of them. So, I mean, with that success that she's had in this event throughout the years, and just as you mentioned, kind of being a respected player on the LPGA Tour, three-time major winner as well. We can't not
Just
mention
recently,
that.
like 3 years ago, which is crazy to think back on.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, she's got a great resume. I think she's an awesome pick. Um, this event goes down September 7th through 13th, 2026. So it's a bit of a ways off from now. And something interesting I found in the press release too is that she does plan to keep playing, quote unquote, well beyond this Solheim Cup. So
Yeah. And I think that's an advantage as well. I mean, you look at Stacey Lewis, I think it's a major advantage that she was still active while she was a captain because she was able to play with these players week in and week out, really know them well, know the younger players as well as the older players. And so I know that Nordquist, her career definitely isn't done yet. I do think that she's not going to play in this Long Cup anymore. I think she's kind of drawing that line right now, but I'm excited to see her enter this new chapter. I could totally see her being kind of like the next Laura Davies, where Laura Davies has been like one of the assistant captains like the last five Solheim Cups. Like I could totally see Nordqvist, captaining one or two teams and then just sticking around as a assistant captain as well.
So moving on, who do you think might be her assistant captains for this event?
So I put out four names that I think are pretty likely. I think Mel Reed is pretty likely. I kind of thought Mel Reed was going to be the pick here, but I don't know if she felt comfortable with that. She has a young kid, I think less than 2 years old. So I don't know if like she was ready for it yet, but I do think she's going to be one of the captains in waiting. Obviously hasn't had like the most incredible LPGA career, but she's been a great Solheim Cup player. She fits the bill. She's very fiery. She's very energetic. And she was vice captain last time out. So I think she'll be back there. I think Caroline Headwall, I think it's her time to get in there. She's been kind of a surprise pick a couple times as a captain's choice, but always shows up to the Solheim Cup, plays well. She's been partnered with Nordqvist a lot. I think 7 or 8 times they've been partnered together. So it'd be kind of a shock for Nordqvist not to bring her along. I think Carlota Saganda might get her chance to be vice captain. And she might be kind of in the Nordqvist thing where she is a kind of a playing one, I think, for a year or two. But I think Saganda is such an important person to have on that team, and you don't want to run the risk of her not making it as a player, and you just don't have her there at all. So I think you want her there in the room in some capacity. And she's the same age that Nordqvist was when she got vice captain position. So, and then the last name is, like we just mentioned, Laura Davies. I think Laura Davies has a position in the room until she doesn't want it anymore. And I don't know why she'd give it up. So, those are the four names that I have as her possible assistant captains.
On to the United States. They still haven't chosen their captain, or we, I guess, we're from the United States. Who do you think that captain will be, and and why, I guess?
Well, the heavy belief is Angela Stanford. Just retired. Obviously a great player, major champion, 7-time winner on tour. Been an assistant captain a couple times, including this last time. I think, and she's a little bit older than some of the other names involved. So I think just on the kind of next person up mentality, I think a lot of people think she is. I still think the job was probably Morgan Pressels if she wanted it. Obviously, I don't know what her job commitments. Obviously, she's the lead color commentator for the LPGA. I don't know how that affects her ability to be the captain, the head captain. Obviously, she's been an assistant captain a couple times, but those are very different jobs. And so she kind of seemed like Stacey Lewis's number two in command. And so I assume that she may have gotten asked, but obviously I'm not sure about that. And then the last name that I think is a possibility is Paula Creamer. Kind of, fits that very energetic vibe that Stacey Lewis brought to the team. I think she could really get the players fired up. I think she connects well with the players. I think all three of those names will be in the captain's room, whether they're the captain or assistant captains. But just from reading the tea leaves, it seems Angela Stanford is the leader to get that job.
Shout out Paula Creamer. I think that's the first time we've mentioned her on this podcast.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, but she's an incredible Solheim Cup player. Like when you look at like her Solheim Cup career, she is fantastic in it. She played in it quite a bit. She had a lot of clutch moments. I do think she's definitely going to be one of the names, probably the next two or three people to get this position, whether it happens now or later.
Big time star when I was like 10 to 12 years old.
She had a
And
seven.
like,
She had a 17-9-5 record in the Solheim Cup, including
wow,
5-2 in singles.
wow.
Yeah,
That's pretty impressive.
it's pretty crazy. So, um, she's beaten both Laura Davies, or she beat Laura Davies. She lost to Charlie Hull. But just think of the difference in generations that is. That she played both of them in Solheim Cups, and that just you don't think of Creamer as like the most yeah, the player with the biggest longevity or the biggest, um, you know, where they're played for a long time and really, really great. But when you look at something like that, I mean, she really was. So,
All right, moving on to the Honda LPGA Thailand. Max, what an event this was, first off, kind of between uh two players really that
mhm.
it came down to. And Angel Yin ended up winning this one with a 28 under par, very low scoring event this time, but she had to sink a birdie putt at the end of the on 18, or else this was going to go to a playoff, and it was quite the final round.
Yeah, this felt like this is going to be a kind of niche reference, but sports fans will get it. This felt like the beat the freeze competition that the Braves
Yes.
have. This felt like that, where it was like Angel Yin kept on getting, and then like EY was just sprinting up next to her and almost caught her. Incredible 61. I mean, she shot a 62 and a 61 and didn't win the tournament. But that's just because Angel Yin was fantastic and super consistent all week. Didn't have a bad round. Even her last round, again, where she almost gave up a huge lead, she still played great. She still shot well under par. It's just UI was that incredible. And so this was a really, really incredible display of golf. Just almost perfection from these two players. And it was really fun to watch.
Just the final hole from EY was insane because her drive wasn't great,
Mm-mm.
was in the rough. Then she had an unbelievable shot from there with, I think it was a hybrid or a three
It
wood.
was some kind of fairway wood, yeah.
Yeah, it was a fairway wood from the rough, which is not easy.
Mm-mm.
Um, almost gets it on, kind of gets it on the green. It was on the fringe. And then I was just sitting there and I was like, okay, I think she's gonna make this. Like I just had a feeling that she was gonna make it, and then she didn't. And like a part of me selfishly wanted Angel Yin to miss because I wanted that to keep going because it was that good of a final round. And as you mentioned, it's crazy this is a super impressive win for Angel Yin just because of what you mentioned with EY shooting a 62 and a 61 in this tournament, and Angel Yin still beat her. Yes, EY didn't have the best third round, but it's just quite the quite the performance from Angel Yin to be able to just hold player off that again shot a 61 and a 62 and was flirting with the 59 range. They were
Yeah.
talking about it on the broadcast.
And just to put this into perspective, and now we're not going to pretend that this is the hardest course on the LPGA tour, like it clearly isn't. But Gino Titicun had 4 rounds in the 60s and finished 7 strokes off the lead.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's absolutely insane. You
Yeah,
really couldn't. I mean, and EY proved it. You couldn't shoot around in the 70s and win this week. Like, because EY played flawless golf other than that round of 71, and she didn't win. Like, you just couldn't. If you shot in the 70s, you were basically eliminated.
yeah, and we both predicted Gino, I believe,
We did.
uh, that she would win. And you can't really say that she played poorly. She
No.
shot 21 under for the tournament and finished third, sole possession of third. It was just the two leaders were just that much better in this than everybody else in this tournament.
And I bought big on Angel Yin coming into the year. I bought a lot of stock on her. I knew that she was rounding into great form toward the end of last year. Obviously, we all talk about that CME Tour Championship performance where she almost won, where Gino Titicun did run her down, which is why I was very happy that Angel Yin did finish this off because those would be two brutal losses to have in that short amount of time. But Angel Yin has been putting together quietly just a lot of high top 10 finishes over like the last 6 months or so. And I mean, it's kind of hard to look back and say that just last September she wasn't on the Solheim Cup team for the United States, and now it's like I think you could argue she's at least playing to the level of the second best American in the world right now. And so this is a good time to be Angel Yin. I think that this will continue throughout the season. She's a great putter of the golf ball. She can drive the ball well. If her iron play continues to be as good as it was this week, because she was fantastic on approach shots, traditionally kind of her weakness. She hit 66 out of 72 greens. That's fantastic. If she hits 66 greens any week, she's going to be in contention to win.
Second career win for her. First time she won was little less than 2 years ago, Buick LPGA Shanghai. So something about the Asian swing or the two Asian swings for her. Just I guess she plays well over there
Yeah.
for whatever reason. Moving
You know what?
on,
By the way, do you know she holds the course record at my parents' golf course
I did not know that.
in
And
Flagstaff? Yeah.
in Flagstaff, Arizona.
Yeah. She
Why
played,
does she golf in Flagstaff, Arizona?
she was playing in an amateur event there and she shot the course record. There's a plaque with her name on it in there and everything.
That's great. I
Yeah.
love that.
All right.
All right, moving on. The HSBC Women's World Championship. That is coming up this week. It's in Singapore. We're continuing the Asian swing. Hannah Green won this one last year with a score of 13 under. So a lot different than this past weekend's
Yeah.
nearly 30 under for the tournament. Um, just your thoughts going into this one. You see it as being kind of a good continuation of one of these players that we've seen start off the season so well, like an Angel Yin, or do you think we see somebody, maybe pop up in that hasn't done as well so far this year?
I think this could be the week where we see the Minji Lee come back fully realized. You just mentioned Hannah Green won last year. And it was interesting. Hannah Green at one point said that a lot of the Australians kind of consider this their home tournament. This is the closest they play to Australia during the year. And apparently they feel very comfortable there. They feel comfortable with, kind of the weather. They feel comfortable with a lot of the factors that go into it. And so I could easily see another Australian kind of taking this. Like it's Australians especially, and maybe it's just coincidence, but when they play tournaments well, they seem to all play pretty well. I mean, we see that a lot in LA. We're at the Wilshire Country Club. Australians dominate that course, and they all have like very different games, but they all seem to play well there. I could see that kind of being the case here as well in Singapore. So I would not be surprised to see a Minji Lee win.
And just overall, like what storylines other than that are you looking for going into this one?
I'm looking at if Gino can continue to keep up her momentum, and then obviously, like on the flip side of Gino, her best friend on tour, Roning Yin, kind of off to a little bit of a slow start this year. Like, can she pick that up and start to play great? Like, I'm not worried about her. She's going to get top five finishes this season. But it's just like, when will it start? When will it happen? She got off to a little bit of a slow start last season, so those are really the ones I'm looking forward to. If Angel Yin can continue to play well, if Yalimi No can continue to play well. We talked about a lot about Rio Takeda. She played really well this year. She got another top 10 finish this week. Like, maybe she can go out there and get her first win, and be the first rookie to a win this season. So, yeah, I'll be very interested to see kind of how this all goes.
So
Oh, and another big factor is weather to keep a lookout for, because Singapore, especially this time of year, known for having bad weather, and they've already moved tee times up an hour today. So we're already starting to see some weather affecting play. There's storms. I looked at the weather today for Singapore. There's thunderstorms in the forecast every day this week. So that'll be an interesting factor as well.
looks like we might have a couple of days where players are playing at least some of multiple rounds,
I would
which is
say that's
always
safe to.
interesting.
I would say that is safe to assume. I think that probably benefits experienced players because they've done it before.
Well, just kind of going through the field here. Again, no Nelly Korda for this one. Gino Titakun, though, Lydia Ko, Ronan Yin, Lilia Vu, Hannah Green, Heyron Yu, Jin Young Ko, Charlie Holt, Celine Boudier. So the only non-top 10 player that is sitting this one, or only top 10 player that's sitting this one out is Nelly Korda. So the rest of the top 10 is in this field.
Yeah,
Um,
really, really good field.
Actually, the top 13 to the top 14, only one of the top 14 is not playing this event. So this should be a really good event, and I'm excited to watch it. One more thing before we get out of here. Um, a new commissioner for the LPGA. Uh, Idea was floated out there about former Pac-12 commissioner Larry Scott and Annika Sorenstam's backing that one.
That's a big
Max,
endorsement to have.
big endorsement, maybe the biggest endorsement.
Yes, I would say pretty close.
Uh, just we're from again, as I said, this ties back close to home to us. This podcast, basically the entire time. What do you make of that? Do you like that idea?
I'm not a huge fan of that idea. Um, and we'll just point out one thing. Annika Sorenstam, who obviously I have so much respect for as a player, as an ambassador for the game, she really pointed out TV and Pac-12 Network as kind of a reason why. I think most people consider Pac-12 Network a pretty steady failure. Uh, and so relative to stuff like Big Ten Network and SEC Network, I think Pac-12 didn't really hit the landing. And so that's something that concerns me. I'd like someone who's a little bit more directly tied to the game of golf, I think, and who understands. I wouldn't mind a former LPGA player, someone who knows what it's like out there, someone who knows what the ins and outs of every week are. Um, I don't know. I just and also Larry Scott's had a lot of jobs. He's bounced around quite a bit. I think the LPGA could use a little stability. I think it was kind of when Mike Wan left. I think it was a little bit of a surprise and a little bit of a shock. And obviously, when Molly Marcous's mom left, that was just came out of nowhere. And I think the LPGA needs some stability right now. And I'm not sure Larry Scott's the one for it. So I don't think he'd get my endorsement, but I would keep an open mind about it.
I didn't hate him as much as a lot of Pac-12 supporters did.
A
Like
lot of
I
people
always
think he is the sole reason for the breakdown of the Pac-12, and that's not true.
no, it is not true. Um, a lot of it had to do honestly with the newer commissioner before, not
Mhm.
the current one of the Pac-2,
Right.
but the commissioner in between Larry Scott and this current one. Um, and then just kind of over the uh, school presidents that thought their schools were worth a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Um, and so Larry Scott, not 100% at fault. Like I saw what he was trying to do with the Pac-12 network. It's just he didn't get it to enough living rooms, basically, is
Yeah.
is the way to say it.
You couldn't
And
watch it with DirecTV, which is the biggest sports, you know,
correct. Yeah.
package that there is. Sports fans like to have DirecTV, and you couldn't watch Pac-12 Network on it.
Yeah. So that's kind of like my hesitation is just like I want to make sure that the LPGA is seen more.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being kind of the stain on Larry Scott's resume, I kind of don't support this for that reason because I think we've both talked about this that the LPGA should be on more
Mm-hmm.
and maybe on more prominently than a lot of the tournaments just hang out on Golf Channel and it doesn't get as much publicity as it should, and I'm just not sure Larry Scott's the guy for that. Um,
I've
However, I again like don't think he is as bad as everyone said he was.
I think a big part of it is questioning what the ultimate goal of the LPGA right now is. I think it's a fair question. Is it to get better sponsors and more money into players' pockets, which is a fair goal to have because I think Larry Scott can do that probably pretty well. He's got a lot of experience with this, both in his time with the Pac-12 and also in his time on tennis tours. I think he could do that well. Or is the goal to get more popular as a league, which then in turn will probably put more money into players' pockets as well. And I think if your goal is to become more popular overall as a league, get more into that mainstream discussion, I'm not sure he's the person to have in charge.
Yeah, I'll make my last point. I think that popularity is the number one thing because we see so much momentum behind women's sports, but kind of not the LPGA in a
Well,
way.
and I'm just going to point this out. I don't know the circumstances behind it. I don't know if it was a scheduling thing. I don't know if she turned it down, but Nike's big Super Bowl commercial
Hmm.
was showcasing their women's athletes.
Hmm.
That was their Super Bowl commercial. Why was Nelly Corda not on that commercial?
Yeah, it seems like the LPGA is just kind of behind the other women's sports leagues, and I'm not sure Larry Scott is the
Which is
guy to bring in
which is
to change
ironic.
that.
Which is ironic because I think you could argue outside of the WNBA on a week to week basis, it's probably the most watched, but the it just hasn't gotten into that mainstream culture yet.
Yeah, and I feel like it's also like I feel like it did and then it didn't. Like 20 years ago, when it was, I feel like a little bit more in the conversation. Um, and with like the Michelle Wee stuff, and then now
Well,
that
and also at the time, it was by far the most broadcast women's sport. Now, the
yeah,
WNBA and women's college basketball has really overtaken that. But at the
yeah,
time, I mean, it was on Golf Channel. It wasn't getting a lot of viewers or sponsors, but it was on Golf Channel at the time. So it did get eyes on it compared to other women's sports. But yeah, I just think right now they need to ramp up that popularity. It needs to start getting into more mainstream culture. Uh,
yeah.
so
I just think I think that the final round of the LPGA event should be on Sports Center every Sunday. Like it should be talked about on Sports Center every Sunday because Sports Center runs WNBA highlights. So why won't they run LPGA
a three
highlights?
minute LPGA package doesn't even need to be that long. It could be like a minute and a half or two.
Yeah,
And
most of their packages are about that long anyway.
yeah, and it's like now we're getting off on a kind of a tangent, and this was something that I said in messages that we probably wouldn't talk about, but now I'm going to bring up Full Swing because, because Full Swing it almost at times goes out of its way to pretend that women's golf doesn't exist. It feels like all of these players, especially, are so focused, and maybe rightfully so, on the men's game. But like when they're talking, they're like, "Oh, I'm the best at this in the world," or "This player's the best at that in the world," and it's like, well, maybe the women's players are maybe a little bit better at that than that person, or like let's give some shout outs to them. Let's have some packages with them. Minji Lee was on an episode of this season, but she's kind of barely featured, and kind of the whole point of it, it seemed like, through very misleading editing, I think, was to portray her as kind of a boring person, like in uh, in contrast to her brother Minwoo Lee, who's obviously like a very fun personality, a very big social media presence. Minji Lee is also a very fun personality and a great player on the LPGA tour, one of the more charismatic players on the LPGA tour. And I think like the editing of Full Swing did her no favors, and I don't think will do the LPGA any favors. And in that same episode, they got a fact wrong, which is they said at one point that, oh, they'd be the first siblings to ever go to the Olympics together in golf, which isn't even true because in 2021 the Corda sisters went together. And so it's just like they just can't get that stuff right, and it's just I think the lens of Full Swing is so narrow, and I'd love to just see them, if next year they do another one, Yeah, maybe you focus on the PGA Tour for 6 episodes, but get some LPGA stuff in there too. We got the Solheim Cup next year. The Solheim Cup has been incredibly dramatic the last couple of years with some of the behind the scenes locker room kind of stuff that could be really interesting to showcase on Full Swing. And so it's just like I do think there's just I think the PGA Tour needs to do a better job of uplifting it. I think the WNBA got a lot of its momentum through NBA players outwardly supporting it. And so I think there's just a lot of people that need to step up their uh, support of the LPGA to help make it more popular. And maybe Larry Scott's the guy who can help do that. So
Obviously, I agree with you. Um, Before we wrap up, what's on the website? Fore-All.com, FORE-ALL.com. What do people need to be checking out this week? Obviously, you'll have coverage of the tournament, but anything else that people need to
yeah, like you said,
check out?
coverage of the tournament. This week got coming up one of the biggest college tournaments on the schedule before you get into like conference play and regionals and stuff, which is the Darius Rucker Invitational. Talk about got people stepping up and showcasing the women's game. Darius Rucker hosts a tournament in South Carolina in Hilton Head. I think
Rudy,
I think 6 of the top 10 teams in the country are playing in it, and so I'll have coverage up on that. And just covered the Bruin Wave Invitational this last week. Got some recaps up on that, which UCLA kind of unexpectedly, I think, won, and that gives them a lot of momentum. They were national runners up last year, and they lost a lot of their talent, and they've reloaded pretty well. So a lot of stuff on that. Obviously, coverage of this week's events. And yeah,
well, hopefully the Darius Rucker tournament will be all right. And we will talk to you next week.